HGI Now, turning supply chain insights into action.
Welcome to HGI Now. I'm Edward Hertzman, founder of Hertzman Global Intelligence. Today, we're going to talk tariffs, refunds, and all things trade enforcement. So I'm happy to have Sal Stile, co-founder and co-chairman of the board for customs broker Alba Wheels Up, with me today. So Sal, you have been in the thick of it for a year now, helping your clients understand the trade regulations, the new enforcement measures, as well as, in some cases, helping them recover money by identifying misclassifications, or you're saving them money through tariff engineering. We have a lot to cover today, but let's start off with macro. What can you tell us about how global cargo flow is changing as a direct result of the Trump administration's trade policies?
Most obviously, China was impacted the most with the IEEPA and reciprocal tariffs and fentanyl tariffs. And at that time, when they were put in place, most companies weren't able to pivot as quickly as they wanted to. They were stuck with POs that had guaranteed performance measures. So clients had and importers had to make a decision whether to ship or not ship, or ship at a loss, or at least hedge and bring goods into a bonded warehouse with the hope that the tariffs would be lower at some point in time, and really try to navigate with the only thing that was certain about the environment was the uncertainty of the environment at the time. So I think it's been a monumental shift. And I think one of the aspects is for small and medium-sized companies, because they didn't have the quantities to fill some of these other factories in other countries, they were shut out and blocked by the larger conglomerates. So I think the small guy really was in a position that even if they wanted to get out of China, they couldn't get out of China.
I know that myself, Khalitha, Lauren, members of my team are calling you every day, calling Vincent, calling other members of your team. So I have to imagine your phone is ringing off the hook. There's so many things that they need your assistance on. But what would you say is probably like the number one question? If I asked you today, your clients are calling you for and saying, Sal, I need help.
I would say the number one question clients have, or how is this going to impact me with a change? So we run modeling on tariffs, what countries could help us if possible, what trade rules or remedies such as the first sale rule, what should I do if I want to bring my goods into a bonded warehouse or a foreign trade zone. A big misnomer was people thought they could bring goods into a foreign trade zone and have the goods enter the commerce of the U.S. at the same rate as the new tariff, which is incorrect. It was going to be at the higher tariff. So I saved some new clients that were getting misinformation from their other brokers, millions of dollars that they would have had in duties. They had to actually ship the goods to other countries and bring it back into the U.S., especially out of the foreign trade zone. So I think what clients are looking for is really guidance as rapidly and accurate as possible. That's really, the end of the day, what they're looking for, and they need an advocate. And that's what we do at Alba. We advocate.
So another topic of conversation you and I have spoke a lot about offline is how the U.S. government, especially under Trump's administration, has stepped up customs-related enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the Uyghur Force Protection Act, whether it's other custom classification cases, but I also talk a lot about the amount of under invoicing that's happening through foreign brokers and the use of DDP. I don't think, no matter how loud I beat that drum, people take me seriously about how much this government has and will step up customs related enforcement. A, do you agree with that statement? And what are the biggest changes you're seeing in how the government is handling goods coming into this country?
Well, I 100% agree with that statement. And one of the reasons why I could say that is I actually met with the highest of the high in the administration on some of these topics. And I heard it straight from their mouths that they were very concerned about undervaluation, DDP. They're aware of a lot of the circumventing of what importers or foreign shippers look to do. So it is a target. They're aware of it. Anyone that thinks they're being creative, know what you don't know. And that's that, in my opinion, CBP and the other government agencies have very sophisticated softwares and technologies to measure what's going on analytically by every import into the U.S. So I would be very cautious and keep both eyes open on all the transactions that you're doing if you're an importer, and 100% must have reasonable care backups on how you had valuation, how you obtained product. If it's DDP, you can't have what's called a blind eye, where if the pricing is too far lower than what should be, there's case law that happened with some importers that were held accountable that for an importer that switched to DDP, had lower goods come in, and CBP said because you turn a blind eye, you're also going to be held accountable for causing an infraction against the U.S. government with undervaluation. So there's a lot of remedies the government has, especially Section 1592, which states any person or entity that causes a shipment to violate customs law or government law that would have a negative impact on the U.S. to be held accountable. And I think that's going to be one of the sections that's going to start coming up more and more, is that 1592.
Well, I have a couple of follow-up questions to this, but on this particularly, is it the company? Is it the executives that own the company? Is it the sourcing director or a chief supply chain officer that's maybe asking the factories to do this? Is anyone that's an accessory in this, liable? Like where does it start and end?
Listen, it's like in the military. It always starts at the top, regardless of what people do under you. You're held accountable, whether you're a CEO, COO, CFO. You can't delegate responsibility to that extent. So I would say at the end of the day, regardless of who's doing what in your company, ultimately you have that position and you're responsible for their actions or inactions. So I would take it very seriously. I would consider supply chain underwriting and imports with customs, the CBP, a whole standard in itself that should be scrutinized by these importers.
It's crazy, Sal. Khalid and I had coffee with the CEO and chairman of, maybe it's one of the top 10 largest global supply chain companies out of Hong Kong, so people could do the math. He said that employees of the company were emailing him personally, asking to change documentation to under invoice. This is how and first of all, he would never do it. It's too much risk for him. But I think that people do not realize, to your point, that the liability does not start net. Like, there is a lot of this happening. I even talk to buyers, retailers, and say, do you understand, if you ask me to make the goods at this price, you're actually asking me to do a crime. There's no way for me, especially when the tariffs run up, 40, 50% in some cases. They don't care because they say, but other people are doing it. And they're not the importer of record. So I think this is a much bigger problem than we're even talking about. And I don't know how to solve it. It's almost, I wrote an op-ed and I talked about Lance Armstrong and doping. He got called out, but the truth was they were all doing it. I mean, do you think this is very, very prevalent? I think it is, especially in the wholesale community. But what are you seeing?
I think it's prevalent. The old adage that, everyone is doing it. Well, that doesn't qualify. Example, we always hear, well, 10 cars passed the red light, so I passed the red light, and the policeman pulled me over for passing the red light. If you tell the police officer, hey, 10 other guys did it, it's non sequitur. It doesn't matter. It's right. Still an infraction. And I would suggest that anyone who feels that they're not importer of record, doing a research on, pull it up on Section 1592, and then reassess your statement.
So what about the other thing that people need to be cognizant of is where the origin of their raw materials are coming from, the labor for any forced labor. Isn't it too late that if a container gets through customs, gets detained, and then the client has to go back and try to retrace their entire supply chain? Maybe it's not possible. By the time that happens, probably whatever delivery they had to meet is probably gone. So what are you advising your clients to do now to ensure that they have the chain of custody and the transparency through their entire supply chain?
I think they should do a prep as if they had internally an important shipment held, even though it may have not been held, and go through the whole entire process as a fire drill and see where the weaknesses are in their organization. That's what I would say at the highest level. I will say that a lot of importers do not realize, and if they go on the customs website, it's very clearly defines that customs expects you at the shipment level to be able to provide documentation from the raw material through the bill of material on any component for those goods, and then justify and present to them in the format that they request that your goods are not subject to a forced labor act. So what Alba did is we were ahead of the curve actually several years ago when we saw this. So we've aligned with some very prevalent world-class traceability technologies that help our clients do a check ahead of time, actually, and also scrub shipment by shipment and analysis. So we're trying to do protective measures. We've had shipments that have been released, that have been detained with the help of this technology. So I'm very confident that this is the way the future's going to be going, because I don't believe most compliance departments have the bandwidth to do this at scale.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't even think most companies understand how to do it at scale. Hot topic, what's the latest on the refunds? What's your understanding of the refund process? And when can companies, here's the real big question, when can they expect to get the money back?
Oh, great question. So I'm asked this frequently. So first, the Court of International Trade told CBP they had to have a mechanism to refund these monies. There's a program called CAPE, C-A-P-E, that is a new technology platform that Customs has been building out to assist in issuing the refunds. I understand that this program, from what I read, is 70 to 80% done. So let's presume that it's complete by sometime in May. Importers first, they should be aware of, in order to get a refund in the first place, they have to have an ACE portal account set up. This is different than ACH. It's called the ACE portal. It's basically the DNA of a importer's imports and classifications and entries. So you must set that up to have the ability to receive the refund, because Customs is not issuing checks like they've done previously. You also have to click the ACH, which is different than ACH paying duty, the ACH mechanism to receive the payments. So every importer must have that set up. February 6th, it was sent out as a notification. We advised our clients, have been assisting in setting up on the portal. The importer must basically set up the portal. The customs broker cannot set up the portal. It has to be importer direct, but the portal has a field that you could put a cross subscriber in, which a lot of clients have put Alba in the portal, so that we could access it and help them and guide them. So that's the first thing that must be done. The other thing is, my guess, if everything goes the way it should, if Customs has the mechanism sometime in May, I was anticipating, barring any additional blocks by the administration or any things of that nature, let's say it's going according to what everyone says it should be doing, I'm thinking in the fall, money should be starting to be issued. I don't see why it wouldn't be. A lot of people say, oh, it's a lot of money, $160 billion. Well, yeah, it's a lot of money, but in perspective, it's not a lot of money to the government. We have trillions of dollars in our economy, and, we do things that are far more expensive. Even the Iran conflict right now is costing billions and billions and billions of dollars a week. So in proportion, it's a lot of money, but not a lot of money.
It's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to keep all of us very, very busy, and there's no shortage of content around this topic. So I'm sure we're going to be talking to you a lot more about this in the coming weeks. Let's pivot a little bit. Now that the IEEPA tariffs are gone, the government has instituted Section 122 tariffs, is actually pursuing 301s again. Is the administration on firmer legal ground with this, or could we expect more legal pushback?
I think there'll be pushback more on the 122, not the 301. 301's been holding up so far. I think that has a better chance. So I would say the other 10% on the 122 is a hedge.
Another big topic, Sal, in the midst of all the tariff issues, another punch to the gut was the government ended the minimis. How have companies adjusted their product flow, warehousing, and last mile? I got a bunch of calls from analysts who cover the sector who were blindsided by, oh my God, Lululemon, has as warehouses in Canada, and all the DTC goods where, there was no duty on that. To me, this seems very obvious. You and I talked about how many people were putting warehouses in Mexico. I thought the companies that were DTC only, that have basically built a whole business with this additional margin, could be very much impacted. But it seemed that a lot more companies were impacted on this than maybe the market thought. Talk about this.
Area I'm very familiar with. I was one of the large, Alba was one of the largest filers of de minimis entries. I was actually on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in April 22 on a de minimis. They called it the $67 billion tariff dodge. It was a negative publicity for the article. I think that's one of the reasons why Congress was more alerted to the de minimis. But we were using it as a tool to help small and medium-sized enterprise compete with the larger conglomerates and online marketplaces. So we were an educator, and it worked very well. We had, $10 million companies that were using de minimis and shipping direct from China, and it was very successful. Now that it's over, we still see opportunity. And the opportunity is those importers, even though you're going to be paying duty, the process is still the same as far as direct to consumer effectively. So you could still pick up goods from overseas in China you still could pay the duties, but you still could have an effective supply chain with transit times and bypassing U.S. warehouse. So we've been successful in that program. You need a very good qualified broker to ascertain the duties, obviously, and so forth, compliance. So basically what it is more compliance, but now you're paying the duty, but still a very effective measure to be utilized in any supply chain. So I recommend it.
So you say, you supported a lot of small, mid-sized companies. A company that was, doing $5, $10, $20 million out of China, got hit with tariffs, got hit with the inability. Now, I think a lot of people don't understand. De minimis was illegal. There was nothing illegal.
No, there's nothing
about it.
illegal. It was illegal.
Yeah. Because Shein and everyone is using it does not mean that it was a legal practice. But my question is, when you're that size company and you have to now absorb higher tariffs, you lose the ability to essentially not pay duty on these shipments. Have you seen a lot of fallout? Have these companies, has a lot of these companies going out of business? Are they struggling? Like what's
the key is that most of the reason why there was fallout is that these companies weren't using the proper providers that were able to do the door-to-door with the formal entry procedure or informal and have an expert by their side that could properly classify and declare to make the best use of still the logistics process, but now having a higher degree of compliance with CBP. So, example, if we had a client that came to us right now, they would basically have the same process as de minimis, except they'd be paying the duty. So that still is very effective because you're still bypassing U.S. warehouse and you're still getting it quicker to the door to the consumer. And you'd have to pay the duty anyway.
What you're saying is more catastrophic than the actual increase in cost has been companies that didn't have either in-house or a third party that understands how to get that from the factory to the doorstep here without an individual getting a DHL bill saying, hey, you have to pay this duty, classifying it properly. That's been the problem.
And here's an example. Some of these online marketplaces at one time had 10 plus customs brokers during de minimis. Now, some of these online marketplaces have also shipped, obviously, to heavy freight where they're housing and doing some warehouse, but there still is a tremendous amount of DTC where there's paying duty. For the sake of discussion, they may have gone down to 10 brokers to 5 brokers, and those 5 brokers were the ones that had the technologies, compliance, ability to classify, to keep these online marketplaces out of the scope of CBP for having non-compliance entries and so forth. So that's how they addressed it.
So as if we didn't have enough conflicts and headwinds already, let's end with the most recent headline, which has been the war in Iran. So I was surprised, recent reports in the port of LA say freight to the U.S. hasn't been disrupted by the war in Iran, but beyond, direct impacts, how could U.S. cargo capacity, pricing be affected? You obviously work with companies that are doing cross-border commerce. What's happening in other parts of the world?
The volume really of on that Trans-Pacific lane doesn't impact the U.S. marketplace. Where the issue is going to be You remember when the Suez Canal was closed during that time, and vessels had to go around the Cape of Good Hope to bypass. That added, weeks and weeks more of transit time and fuel and delays. This is how I see it. I think if these vessels are getting delayed on the rotations because the steamship lines reallocate vessels and so forth, if that throws off their capacity and transshipment points like Singapore, and you start having a parlay bottleneck, I think that's where rates will increase as a result of that. The bunker, which is basically the fuel charge, sure, that will increase a bit, but not substantially.
Is there anything that we didn't address today that you think our audience should be thinking about?
Well, I think the audience should be thinking about, which we've been highly successful with, the use of technologies aligned with a customs broker, not technologies that are not in tandem with a customs broker, because customs just had a ruling on this issue as far as using AI technologies for customs business. I think there's a huge opportunity for importers to use these technologies in tandem with a customs broker that has the oversight to review all their SKUs, all their classifications, tariff engineering, where you could make better decisions on how to build a product at a lower rate of duty. We've been very successful, and here's an example, and it was published actually in the Washington Post, an article on it. We did a scrub of a new import client to Alba of their previous entries and of their previous classifications that they had in their CRM system. And we determined that there were possibly millions of dollars in misclassification issues. And one of the most blatant was that this particular client was having candles coming in. They imported it as shampoo sets because their ERP system had shampoo sets, and they were just, the other broker was just filing it as that, not double checking. So there's a lot of reasons why there are errors in classification. Some of it's legacy, where you have 10,000 SKU numbers and one person made a key punch error and so forth. But we now have these technologies that could scrub 10,000 SKUs within a day or two and give an analysis and bring to the attention of, the C-level and compliance department that, hey, something doesn't look exactly right here. Maybe we should give a second look. And that's where I see a tremendous opportunity is going forward.
Sal, it's interesting you bring this up because I've talked to several companies about this technology. And when they go to their supply chain department, the response is, oh, yeah, we're on it. We know what we're doing. And I always say to the principals, guys, your team doesn't want to look bad. Mm-hmm. They don't want to go back and say, hey, I misclassified, or the consultants or the agencies or made a mistake and we overpaid by 10 or 20 million dollars. However, I promise you, I think you said 1 in 8 shipments are misclassified.
Yeah, from our analysis, with this technology, we found that there's about a 1 in 8 ratio of misclassification.
So it's mind blowing that you often see resistance from the people that are doing the work because they don't want to get called out. Oh. But I would urge any of the owners and operators that are listening to this, there is a real material opportunity here, because I promise you, you and I've talked about it. I've seen the mistakes myself. There's a lot of money sitting here.
There's a tremendous amount of money here. We've run the scrub with beta testing for some very, very large importers who have compliance departments and teams that do this. And you know what? We ran the scrub and we said, hey, you gave us 30 entries to review at a high level, and we've identified, mistakes. So I would say any importer that doesn't look to at least have an analysis, and by the way, the cost analysis is almost nothing to do. Right. So, I mean, right. Alba only would get paid if we helped you get your money back at the end of the day. And identify. And by the way, these quasi audits show reasonable care to a certain extent as well. This technology would save an importer traditionally that went to a big consulting firm or accounting firm, if they had to do a review, could be $500,000. So we're giving basically $500,000 service away for free. And that's
Okay.
that's a whole nother area to reason why you'd want to use it.
Well, I also tell people too, you sleep better at night knowing you have insurance, right? No one actually wants to ever have to submit a claim, but let's say you come back, you do the scrub, and you see that there's no mistakes. That's also great to know that your team is on top of it and they're doing the things
Well,
correctly.
that's
Like that's
perfect,
also a piece.
especially if you're a public company.
Yep. And if you're not charging them for it, I mean, these are the type of no-brainer opportunities that I think are out there. Everyone's trying to beat down the factory for an extra penny. There's other ways you could think about, saving money or becoming more efficient. Well, Sal, I very much appreciate the time. You've been a great friend to me in the business for years. And every time I speak to you, I learn something. So thank you.
Thank you.